it may make sense intuitively why you should tell other people about your large goals and aspirations. For one, you'll have the accountability from setting the standard, having to live up to it in that person's eyes. You'll also have the external validation, which can serve as motivation. But what the research suggests, and through studies and through my own personal experience, that when you tell other people about your goals, you inhibit and may halt the progress altogether of the pursuit of that goal. And I'm going to make the argument that the silent grind is not only more productive, but it's also more fulfilling overall. This is Learning with Curran. Welcome back, y'all. My name is Sean Curran, and I make these videos because I enjoy learning just as much as I enjoy creating, and making these videos allows me to do both. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the silent grind, and particularly why it's more fulfilling and more efficient in achieving long-term and important goals in your life. And there's really three main reasons behind this belief, and the first one I'm going to get into is around premature completeness and fulfillment. While researching this topic, there was a name that I saw over and over again: Peter Gollwitzer, who's an NYU professor and psychologist who studies goals. And he wrote a book in 1982, and his studies in 2009 later confirmed this, that when an individual is working towards a large goal, like becoming a psychologist or a lawyer, when they receive recognition for their efforts early on in their journey, they are less likely to continue along that journey and have a lesser intrinsic motivation when moving forward with that goal. So in his studies, when he congratulated an aspiring psychologist or lawyer on their progress, they had this sense of fulfillment and completeness. But it was premature in nature because they hadn't actually become a psychologist or become a lawyer. And in turn, they had this lack of motivation because in their brain, they couldn't differentiate between their current state and their future self, which is actually the real thing. So when your brain can't delineate between your current self and your future self, who you aspire to be like, who has a degree and a high-paying job or a business, etc., then the motivation to get from point A to point B isn't there because your brain thinks you're already there. So while you're having this conversation, if they're paying attention, it's almost a guarantee that you're going to feel that fulfillment internally when discussing this goal. But an underappreciated aspect of this whole process is their reaction to your goal. So the impact of their reaction has the potential to add or amplify the existing negative effects of telling them about your goal. So while the first problem came about through premature completeness and fulfillment, the second problem with their reaction is going to be around discouragement. So there's three main reactions that I've experienced and are kind of backed up by research that show these additive negative effects of reactions. So the first is a mismatch in enthusiasm, where the other person doesn't understand why you're so excited or obsessed about the goal that you're pursuing. The second discouraging reaction is negative feedback too early. So a 2011 University of Chicago research study found that negative feedback is good, but only for the more later intermediate or expert people in a particular field. They almost seek out negative feedback. But beginners crave positive feedback, particularly that relates to their commitment and that will keep them on track moving forward. The last reason is a double-edged sword. It's competition. So when someone reacts by mentioning that a lot of the people that they know are doing the same thing, pursuing the same goal, it can do one of two things. It can encourage you by kind of appealing to your competitive nature and wanting to outperform those other people, but it can also make it seem like the goal that you're pursuing is saturated with other people who want to do the same thing and results in a net negative. So before I continue on to the next point, I did just want to make a quick caveat, because a lot of the information and reasoning that I presented is pretty negative regarding the sharing of goals with other people. But I do believe that there's a time, a place, and a person where it makes sense to share your goal with the other individual. If that person can serve as a mentor or solve a problem that you're having, provide some creativity or innovation, I believe that it could make sense to share your goal with that person. So while I still stick with the belief that the negatives outweigh the positives, there are scenarios where it may make sense to share your goal to get some help and be more efficient throughout that process. So on to the next point. The mindset that the silent grind is the most fulfilling has been one that I've adopted and held for many years. And the first two reasons that I've talked about so far have kind of made sense. I didn't want to have that premature completion that's almost unearned, and I was weary of the reactions of the people around me. But the third reason was one that really came about in the last 3 to 6 months, and I think plays the most important role in fulfillment, especially in the long term. If you can work on a project or progress on a goal for weeks, months, or years without pursuing any external validation, I generally believe that that goal is true to you, meaning that you're utilizing intrinsic motivation and that it's a great indicator of long-term fulfillment. At the end of last year, I read this book called Drive by Daniel Pink, and essentially the whole book is about intrinsic motivation and the surprising truth about what motivates us. And there's really 3 main drivers: autonomy, the ability to think and act freely and on our own accord. The second is mastery, the ability to improve and develop our own skills and abilities. And the last is purpose, providing value to the world and accomplishing your personal why. And Pink uses his research to make the claim that extrinsic motivators, or carrots and sticks as he calls them to illustrate extrinsic rewards and punishments, are a thing of the past. They were used primarily in the 20th century, and that if managers or leaders want to get the most out of their talent, or if you want to be an entrepreneur and kind of pursue your own endeavor, that the best way to do that is to utilize these intrinsic motivators for increased productivity, efficiency, and creativity. And that's really what I wanted to hammer home with this video, is that if you want that outcome and you want it to come naturally, it has to come from within. Meaning that as you start this grind, you embark on this journey, that it should be untainted with the opinions and reactions of others, and that there should be no premature completeness or fulfillment, and that your brain can delineate between point A, where you are right now, and point B, your ideal future self that is somewhere in the future. Because you have the intrinsic motivation to get between point A and point B. You already have it within you, and you have the choices and the opportunities to get there. And that's why the silent grind is most fulfilling. That's all I have for this video, so I appreciate you taking the time to watch it all the way through. I hope it was valuable and worthwhile, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.